Here's my criticism. I think a lot of people are already calling it a classic. A lot of people are already saying it's the best album of the year. And I'm hesitant to say that because, one, what's up, everybody? This is Big Swiss CHH, recording from a new location. I'm recording from my house now. I was recording at the office. I really liked the lion lamb background I had there, but when you're at the office all day, you don't want to stay and record, so I decided to kind of get some equipment and start recording from the house. So thank you. Sorry it's been a while. I have a ton of video ideas that I'm just dying to get to. B Plus and I are working on something that's coming soon too. So really excited to just jump in and start delivering a lot more content. So today we're going to be talking about Whatuprg New Hollywood. It just came out Friday, September 30th. Highly anticipated release. Everyone's been talking about it. And I just wanted to give some of my takes on the album, what spoke to me, what I liked, what I disliked, some criticisms and some praise, and then also just kind of more of a biblical look at, hey, what does community do in times of addiction? So yeah, let's get into it. So first off, I'm a big Whatuprg fan. I think that his previous projects, specifically Raul, I always wrestle with his projects. He comes from a very different background than me. He has a very, very deep insights in the way that he approaches his music, and I think that most of the community, Christian hip hop community, understands that. So I think for me, Whatuprg is kind of filling the space when I look at like bringing people into the Christian hip hop space from the secular space. I'm thinking of fans of Kid Cudi, Travis Scott, that kind of wavy sound that he really likes to approach everything with. Ever since I heard Exit 104 and Role Models, like I was like, wow, this is really filling that void in the Christian space. In fact, I actually spoke with an acquaintance of mine who I just met recently, found out we had a lot in common, found out he was a hip-hop guy, but he doesn't actually listen to Christian hip-hop, and he's a Christian. And I was like, oh, hey, like, what do you listen to? And he was like, I'm really excited for the new Freddie Gibbs album, the new Cudi album. And I was like, sweet, do you listen to Christian hip-hop? He's like, I've only really listened to Lecrae. And I was like, cool, hey, if you like Cudi, check this out. I sent him New Hollywood. 2 days later, he texted me, this was yesterday or Sunday, he goes, I didn't know this existed. And so Christian hip hop isn't experiencing this lack of talent or lack of skill in the space. We all know that. It's just a lack of people even knowing it exists, or that there are creators that are doing the things that we like without the secular connotations. So I think I've always felt that way about RG. The story behind why this album is so anticipated and why it took so long to get here is his content got stolen. Someone stole his laptop with his hard drives and all of his music. He had to reconstruct this whole album from scratch, which had to be laborious, frustrating, and also just, I can't imagine the feeling of defeat. I mean, I know me coming from like a creative standpoint, so my degree's in 3D animation. I love, like, you can see gaming stuff in my background here. Like, I used to work in the game industry before I switched over to ministry, and the defeat of having to start a project over, it's real. Like, I can't imagine what it must feel like when it's actually your product. You're putting it in yourself on a piece of music. And so we're all really excited. And I want to get one thing out of the way off the bat is I love this album. I think it's a really good concept piece. There are artists who will release albums that are just a collection of songs, or, hey, this is just what I've been working on. And then there are artists who create like actual concepts, spaces, soundscapes to put you in, to make you feel an emotion. And RG is one of the best at that. And so any criticism you hear from me going forward is really just me either being nitpicky, because I am nitpicky, or two, just a valid concern as like a Christian and a brother in Christ, and just, hey, what does it look like to process addiction? What does it look like to process, the themes that are going on in this album? So let's get into it. I stayed up really late on Thursday night for the midnight drop. There was like 4 albums that came out that I stayed up really late, but this was the first album I listened to. I was really excited about it. And right off the bat, I love a good intro. But my first criticism of the album is that Kids was already released and it's the first song on the album. And so to me, when I'm listening to a concept piece, I want to be like sucked in. I don't want any scenes given away. And the way that New ends with the way that it says, this is New Hollywood. You don't have to pretend, or there's no more, I forget the exact words, but it blends straight into we don't pretend no more on Kids. And I love a good melodic intro that bleeds into, I think of Am I Falling from Andy Mineo's Neverland 2 last year, probably one of the best intros I've ever heard, period, across the 30 years I've been listening to hip-hop, just because of how much thought went into how it connected. And this also, while it didn't have like as much connection points, it still bled into it, and I have to confess that I skipped it on my first listen. I was like, I've already listened to Kids. I want to hear the next song. I want to get into the next thing. And so maybe that's me just as a consumer, like knowing, all right, I already know this song. I've already listened to it for 6 months or so. And it's also like on the top 10 of my best of CHH 2022 playlist. So it gets a lot of play. And so it's kind of like giving me one of the scenes of the movie before I go to the movie. Like, when you watch a trailer and you're like, man, they gave away too much. I felt like this because Kids is my like favorite song on the album that will get probably a lot of replay. And so I'm thinking through how studio executives and creative directors and how Reach strategizes the way they release an album or release a single for an album. Because if I'm looking at this, I'm not giving away the opening hook too early. It's almost like I'm showing you my poker hand before we start playing the deck. And so the way the album starts is great. I love how Kids goes into MySpace and how he talks about the struggles that he's basically setting you up for the things that he's going to go through. And then it goes into Human when it talks about just what it is to be a human in this world and a Christian. So originally here I had a critique of the ending of Human, which I think is written with a specific intent to get conversation going. So I watched my footage. I listened to myself. I'm like, man, did I go a little too hard there? So I went back and re-listened to the song again, and I think I see what he's trying to do here. So the end of Human, he's talking about all the social issues that we're facing in America and the world, really, and just the division that we're having. And he's actually talking from the perspective of like, man, I'm getting all this information, all this news, it's all stressful, and the best, I just want to levitate, I just want to medicate, and then it goes into floating melatonin. And so I think it's just a setup for that meat of the song, and now I'll start talking about my favorite part of the album. And then it goes into probably my favorite part of the whole album. It goes on like this 4-song kind of just meat of the album, and this is where I really started to resonate. And so Floating comes in as like this nice melodic intro into Melatonin, and Melatonin features 350, who in my opinion has released one of the best first projects a rookie or freshman artist has ever released. His Love You Divine album this year also explores the same things that New Hollywood explores, and also has a similar soundscape to it, and also features another Indie Tribe artist. I know What Up RG's Reach now, but it used to be Indie Tribe. It also, that album also had not What Up RG, I'm sorry, also had Mowgli the Iceberg. So there's just some of these cool crossovers between who they collaborate with, which I thought was awesome. But anyways, 350's on this album. The song's called Melatonin. It's just about like this addiction to this pill that helps you sleep and makes you forget. And I totally resonate with that as someone who struggles with insomnia. I can't turn my brain off. I can't stop thinking. And so I do take ZzzQuil every night, which is kind of a form of melatonin, just so I can get a good night's sleep and shut my brain off. And so this song, one, I think sonically really resonated with me, but two, I really like the trade-off that 350 goes for, or Whatuprg in this song. And I thought it was also one of the better choruses in there. I really thought that the melody that comes in from the back, the way he's kind of singing that really resonated with me. And so Melatonin was probably the song, if I was going to be in the room, and I'm going to sit down and say, hey, what's the single we're releasing? I probably would have released Melatonin versus Kids. Give you some of the meat of the album and let that intro have a higher impact on somebody. Because if I had not heard Kids before listening to this, my head would have exploded. Because it exploded the first time I saw it. It exploded when I saw the awesome music video that they did for Kids. And so to me, it felt like, man, Melatonin could have been like a really good, it's a short song. I think, what does it say here? It's 2 minutes and 44 seconds. So there's a lot of short songs on here. Kids is only 2 minutes and 12 seconds. So give us a little bit more, show us a feature, give us like a hint of who's on it. So I don't know. I'm really interested in what the strategy would be for artists to release this. Do you release your best song first? Do you release maybe a more resonant song first? I mean, as someone who works on a creative team myself, I love talking like, hey, what's the best for the product? Personally, my opinion was, man, I really wish I heard Melatonin first and I got to experience Kids for the first time when the album releases. Actually, my full opinion is, and I know this is just not a good strategy for a record company, is don't release anything. Just drop the album. Let me experience it, especially an album as deep and thoughtful as this that needs a couple playthroughs for you to kind of sit with what the artist is trying to tell you. So we go from Melatonin, we go into Need You, and then Running was actually the first song that I instantly repeated. So I got through, actually I didn't even finish the song before I repeated. I thought the way the bass line came in on the chorus, because this song is really short. It's only 2 minutes and 29 seconds. So I guess, yeah, each song left me wanting more of it. Like I wanted another round of that bass line coming in on Running. It just felt like, I don't know, there's just something powerful. It was almost like a minor chord in there that's making me feel the emotion, like a sad grieving. I felt like the song was talking about a relationship with a woman, but also neglecting God. And it ends with him running to you, which when you look at the lyrics on Genius, the you is capitalized. So I'm assuming he's talking about God and running away from the relationship. And that's something that I 100% resonate with as someone who's dealt with just a past of finding my value in other women and not in who God made me to be. So I definitely understood Running. And then it goes into Sober, which has Paris Chariz. I really like Sober. I identify with addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, pornography, even just pride, ego, all those things you can be addicted to and you can make an idol out of it. And so then we go into a couple songs, which you can see on my playlist here. I heart all the songs that I want because those are usually the ones I'll throw on playlists. Already, Love You, and 285, I didn't give hearts. There's nothing wrong with these songs. It's just not my sound, but I'm the type of fan who, even if I don't like something, I'm not a hater. I get why the song is made. I get that there's an audience for that. And I look at music as a tree with a ton of branches. Actually, Slug from Atmosphere said this, I think, in a song with Logic, actually. And then he said it at a concert about 15 years ago in San Francisco. He was talking about how, hey, don't hate on all these mainstream artists. hip hop's a tree with all these branches, and we're all just birds that get to pick what branches we get to live on. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. And so I always look at music through that lens. And I think Whatuprg is an insanely talented artist. So if he makes a song I don't like, I don't hate it. I put that in my like Rolodex of, hey, you know what? This song is actually good for my friend Frank. Or this song, I'd send this song to my friend Noah. He's more into that indie hip hop kind of sound, where I'm more into that like deep melodic wavy or boom-bastic, or I love me some boom bap stuff. I love that indie grimy like Def Jux early 80s, or not early 80s, early 2000s, late 90s raucous sound. Like I love that stuff. And so I'm always figuring out like, hey, what song can I give to somebody to introduce them to the space? And so these songs weren't my favorite, but what I really loved was the way this album ends. And so you go from 285 to Running 2, which is a continuation from Running, which was the eighth song. And what I really like about Running 2 was Running 1 was running away from something, and Running 2 is running to Jesus. And I thought that was a really cool way to set up the final song of Hollywood. And I know I just said Kids is my favorite song, and I mean that from like a sense of it's my favorite song that I'll probably be playing in my car with my windows down, bass up, rocking out. Hollywood is the best song on the album, because it's the crescendo of the album. It's the final act. It's the final resolution. It is what we all strive to do, is to run back to God and find the grace that He gives us, and know that we aren't condemned for because we're covered under His blood. You know, Romans talks about this. Romans 8 talks about this. And so Hollywood is probably a song that's, you know, I'm glad that it's got kind of a higher play count on here. I'm hoping that there's a music video to this one that also incorporates running. Actually, I think what would be awesome, Reach, you can use this for free. I would do a music video featuring Running, then Running 2, then Hollywood. Blend that whole thing together, because I think there's a ton of people, especially in our hookup culture now. And then you have Kids Again, which is another melodic outro, and then you go into Praise, which I'm really interested in why they took the Jay Monty verse out for the No Big Deal verse. Those are probably the two best lyricists in Christian hip hop right now. And so I'm interested in what that switch was. I actually didn't know that Praise was released earlier this year on not streaming platforms, but other socials. And so when I first heard Praise drop a couple weeks ago, I instantly pulled up the Genius song, and I'm like, wait, where's the Dilly verse? Why is Jay Monty in here? So I was confused. But Praise is a banger. I remember when it came out, I was texting my friends at work, and I'm like, Praise is dope, but it sounds like the song that you would put at the end of an album. Or like, you know, back in the day, kids, we used to have things called record stores where we'd go and actually buy physical CDs. And they used, in hip hop, it was very popular to release singles. And when you would buy the single CD, it was like $3. You would just get the song, and then you'd get like a remix of it. And that was the only way you heard remixes back then in the 90s. And I was like, man, this is like one of those single remix songs that you would get on there. So it's just like a treat. It's like a cherry on top. And so love the placement of that. Love that song. So yeah, all in all, I mean, Whatuprg released one of the best albums of the year. Here's my criticism. I think a lot of people are already calling it a classic. A lot of people are already saying it's the best album of the year. And I'm hesitant to say that because, one, I wouldn't call anything a classic unless it's been out for at least a year and I'm still listening to it. Example, let's look at, I don't know, let's take a secular artist like Kendrick Lamar, right? Like he's probably the most controversial or highly praised in our generation, right? And he just released an album this year. I listened to it a few times and then I didn't listen to it for like 2 months. To me, it's just not a classic. Now, if I go back to it in a year, it was actually funny. Mike LV, John Keith, and I were talking a couple weeks ago. They were in Dallas. And we were talking about how Kendrick's always a couple years ahead of everyone, and we were just waiting to catch up. And so maybe that's the case here, and maybe that's the case with this, but I'm always hesitant to call anything a classic right off the bat. And then two, the reason I'm releasing this review on a Tuesday the week after is because I need to listen to an album at least 5 times before I'm going to like talk about it. And so I've given this album at least 5 playthroughs. I've given Melatonin Needs You, Running Sober, and Hollywood. I've probably given those like 20 or so playthroughs just because I like them. They resonate with me. But the other thing I wanted to talk about with this was it's interesting the themes of this album given the song Role Models exists, which is 4 or 5 years old now. And so Role Models talks about him being in a room with a lot of his role models, and they have liquor bottles everywhere, and that, hey, I guess we're all dealing with our own problems, and we'll put it in our music. And so it's like he's already seeing the red flags early in his career, and then 5 years later, it sounds like he's still struggling with that. And so grace abounds in that, and I think that's a beautiful thing to be transparent and open and doing that. But my concern is like, who's this guy in community with? Who's holding him accountable? What's his church community like? I'm always interested in that because I come from a heavy community church where we put a heavy emphasis on accountability and whatnot. Small example is, my wife and I got in an argument a week ago, and we called a little timeout, and the first thing I did was call my community group. Hey guys, help me see my blind spots. What's going on? Like, there's a trust and transparency in my community where I feel like, hey, I feel like I'm right, but help me see my blind spots or whatnot. And so I'm interested in how other people view the church and how they view community and how they view male camaraderie in the midst of a biblical community. And so I don't know if this song is like a current, or if this album and themes are a current thing he's struggling with, or if he's reflecting on that. Either way, praying for him. And I still, that does not go against anything I've said about the album. I think it's still great. I love it. This will probably be a top 10 album at the end of the year. Anyway, so what were your favorite songs on the album? What did you like, dislike? What were the things that you thought stood out to you? What was your favorite bar? If there were any, what was your favorite beat on the album? For me, I would say Running was my favorite beat. I just love the way that bass line comes in. Let me know what you think. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.